Hello and welcome to the Modern Day MoBro. Today I'm very excited about our guest. I will be meeting with John Gilmore, or as I know him as, is Brother Gilmore. He's my father-in-law's probably his best friend. They're just a couple of really fun old guys. John's a retired well, he's done a little bit of everything, but he retired from the INL, the International Nuclear Resource, oh gosh, the International Nuclear. He worked with nuclear stuff and the cleaning up of nuclear waste. And he's just like really smart. Either way, I had the joy of spending Christmas with my in-laws, and John or Brother Gilmore came around, and I had a great chat with him. And while I was talking with him, I was like, man, I just need to get you on our podcast. So that's how this happened. I'm gonna now invite him on, and we will go from there. All right, let's hear this. Okay, it's working. We're on.
Fantastic.
Brother Gilmore, thank you so much for joining us and dealing with technical difficulties.
Right. Well, unfortunately, I have some people in my household that have all kinds of gadgets to work stuff.
We live in a world of toys, don't we?
Yeah. Well, my wife spent 3 years working on her doctorate, so she has their tools, not toys.
That is the truth. For her, they really are.
Right.
Now
she's not here. She's busy working to supply us with the money to buy more toys.
That is what is life if not more toys? Now she's a nurse practitioner, correct?
Correct. She has her Doctor of Nursing Practice degree.
My aunt has that.
She is. Okay, awesome. She's a DMP as well.
Yeah. So what you're saying is she's way smarter than us.
She's been way better educated, that's for sure. Well, my wife's smarter than me. My wife has a chemical engineering degree as her bachelor's.
Yeah.
She has a license as a chemical engineer. She graduated valedictorian from high school, college, and grad school.
Holy cow. So she's just she won't let anyone else be smarter than her in any room.
Well, not only that, she played 4 years of college basketball while she was doing that.
What? I didn't know she played college basketball.
Yeah, played a forward.
Holy cow. Where at?
Down in Mexico.
Down in Mexico. And what part of Mexico is she from?
Veracruz. She's from the Narrow land where the Book of Mormon happened. That's where she's from.
That's where she's from. There you go. Have you ever heard? So it's interesting you say that. There's a theory that I've heard that I don't know. Because some people say that it happened in Mexico, South America. Have you ever heard the theory that the Book of Mormon happened in North America in between all the Great Lakes?
I've heard that, and I totally discount it.
Okay.
You know why?
Why?
Okay. You know how cold it gets up there?
Way too cold. I've been to Idaho. That's too cold as it is.
Right. And so they don't say anything about freezing their butts off.
Yeah.
And up there, winter is a major part of everything.
Yeah. Everything revolves around the winter. Like right. Everything you do has to be about that.
Right. And so half the year the water's frozen. So nah. I mean, I know what people like to think that, but I don't think. I think what happened is there actually are tribes in North America, including the Dakota, the Sioux.
Yeah.
Who I took American Indian Studies as a minor.
You did?
Yeah.
I didn't know this.
Yes. Anyway, they claim that they came from the Yucatan Peninsula after a big war and went north to get away.
Holy cow, the church is so true.
So that makes sense because they ended up in the Ohio River Valley, and as well as the tribes that are part of the Haudenosaunee, which are the 7 tribes of the Iroquois.
Yeah.
Most of them also came from down south. They're known as the Snake People. whereas the people that came from the north are known as the turtle people. So like the Ojibwe, Chippewas, and stuff like that, including the Navajo, who aren't turtle people, but they came from way north. They're
I
and
didn't know
settled
this at
down
all.
there.
Wow.
So there is, and there was a lot of fights between them after they left and came north. Okay.
Between
So
the turtle and the snake people.
yes.
Okay.
So one of the large mounds is a picture of a snake swallowing a turtle's egg.
I've heard about these large mounds that are snakes and that are facing in like
Right.
perfect east or perfect
Right.
west. I think
Yeah.
it's
Well,
perfect
those
east.
cultures originated down in Mesoamerica, came
Yeah.
north, whereas uh, there's other ones that came from the north. And now the Aztecs originated in the Great Basin around
Yeah.
Salt Lake. And around 800 AD, there was a really big drought, so they headed south.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
were cannibals, and they ate people as they went south. My wife was my wife there when she was talking about that?
I've never spoken to either of you guys about this. I'm gobbling this up. I didn't know any of this.
Okay, well, see, my wife is a Toltec, which are the
Okay.
people that actually built Mexico City before the Aztecs came, and they
Really?
were part. Yes, their Toltec means the scholars,
Oh my goodness.
and they're part of the Uto-Aztecan language family, which is the one that has the closest, the most Hebrew elements in it of
Really?
all the languages
What?
in North and South America.
Okay.
That's
How
now.
did
It's
how
called now.
did so how do they know that? Like how did they figure that out?
Well, several reasons. One of them is Aztlan is the place of the Aztec state they came from,
Yeah.
and that is on the maps, shows that as the Great Basin. Antelope Island is an island in the lake that has 7 caves, and that's where they came from.
Okay.
And up in the Book Cliffs, there's petroglyphs showing Aztec warriors with their full headdress carrying people's heads. And
Okay.
then they found evidence the Utes have the same language, the Paiutes and the Goshutes all come from the same language family. That language family goes all the way down to almost to Honduras.
Yeah.
And those people, and they're related. And then there's also, they've wiped out the Anasazi, which are where the
Oh,
Pueblos.
yeah, I'm familiar with the Anasazi.
Well, the
Yeah.
Anasazi got eaten by the Aztecs.
Didn't they just like disappear?
No, they got eaten.
Well, by
They
the
they
by,
found evidence that they were attacked, and
holy.
the evidence of cannibalism in their final.
I tell you what, our Mesoamerican civilizations pre Columbus are the Book of Mormon times.
Yeah,
Holy cow. What they were doing was crazy.
it was crazy. Well, they also, my son John, the oldest, was down in Mexico City last year, a year before Christmas,
Yeah.
and he and his wife went to the museum. There's a big, huge museum in Mexico City, and there was an exhibit there about talking about the trade between China and Mesoamerica before the Europeans showed up,
Okay.
and all these artifacts. So they had extensive trade
Wait.
relations.
I've never heard of this before right now. There
Really?
was trade going on between China and the Mesoamericans.
Yes.
I wow. I've never heard of this until now.
There's a big exhibit of showing all the stuff from it.
Holy
So,
cow.
so the thing is that they people think of Columbus, a Eurocentric type of viewpoint of the world limits your understanding of world history.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Chinese, there was a period of time when the Chinese did a lot of overseas trading. One of their emperors thought it was in making the merchant class too powerful. And right
Okay.
before Columbus, it was about 1438, 1440 sometime, he shut off their trade because he thought that the emperor was going to lose his power. And so that would made it so that instead of the Chinese being here, Columbus shows up, and the Chinese merchant ships were much bigger and much more powerful. They actually went all the way to Venice, and they left a copy of a encyclopedia type book that has a whole bunch of drawings in it that show up in Da Vinci's drawings.
What?
Yes.
Man, I feel so uneducated right now. This is like, holy cow, John, I didn't know
So
this
the
at all.
Lord intervened to keep they kept the Chinese from taking over and
Yeah,
allowed Columbus to come. And so, because if China had come in here and been able to exercise, they being able to be the main power, there
yeah,
would never have been an opportunity for the gospel to be restored. Because China had already destroyed Christianity, had extended all the way to China
yeah.
from it's called, I don't hear the Nestorian Church.
No, I'm
Okay, there's evidence that China, Mongolia, and Japan, and all these different countries in the East actually had Christianity introduced to them in the second, third century. Right at the beginning when the apostolic period,
yeah.
and then it was wiped out by Islam, which is one of the antichrists, I think. So,
Really?
I mean,
I've never thought of this
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 is
way.
after
This is
the
wow.
apostasy, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So after the apostasy, and they've spread that far, and then
Oh, they actually spread before the apostasy, but after the
yeah,
apostasy, they were severely curtailed.
man, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I'm kind of speaking about China, and so we were talking about posterity and the Abrahamic covenant
Right.
and lineages. And that's one thing that I don't know much about, is what the lineage is going to be from our brothers and sisters that are in China. And like, what's that guy, what
You
tribe are they
know,
going to belong to, and what's that going to look like? It's interesting to think about.
yeah. Well, I'm trying to remember there's a guy in the stake presidency. Well, he's not a member of. He's one of the secretaries,
Okay.
and he's from Shantung province, which is the province that's opposite the Korean Peninsula.
Okay.
And he's been doing a lot of his genealogy, and I'm trying to remember what I got to ask him. I think he's Ephraim, but there's been a lot of the other tribes have showed up in the former Soviet Union, Russia,
Yeah.
because that's directly north of where the Babylonian and Assyrian and Persian empires were.
Yeah.
So those people went north, right?
Okay.
So yeah. And then, of course, they went south as well because they ended up in Ethiopia. And there's also a Christian community and Jewish community in the Indian subcontinent. So,
Like, currently there is, or like they were founded
yeah, well,
from?
it's
Yeah.
ancient. It's still there.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
they have. I had a coworker that was a member of the church that predated the Europeans'
Yeah.
conquest of India, and they traced their apostle that set them up to Philip.
Yeah.
So,
John, how did you get to? Because you mentioned that you were a convert. How did you get into the church? Like, if you don't mind me asking, we are
sure,
recording,
I'll
so
be
if you
happy
don't,
to tell.
yeah,
When I was in high school, I had one friend that was a Latter-day Saint. He was a guy I used to smoke dope with.
yeah,
Okay. And he had a sister that I wanted to go out with, but she wouldn't. She said, I won't go out with you unless you meet with the missionaries at least once. So I met with them once. So I had a vague understanding, but not really.
yeah,
Okay. But when I got the basic training, this first Sunday I was there, they said chapel time. So they lined up the Protestants and they lined up the Catholics and they marched off to the chapel. And about less than a half an hour later, you came back and started cleaning the toilets, the urinals, and the sinks and the showers with
yeah,
toothbrushes. Okay.
yeah,
Now, the LDS servicemen were gone, and they were gone for 3.5 hours. So they missed out on this. So the second Sunday, they said, who wants to go to LDS services? And I went because I missed out on latrine duty.
that
And
talk about missionary work right there.
so avoiding cleaning a urinal with a toilet toothbrush, I started going to LDS services.
Yeah,
Okay. And then it didn't take them very long to realize once I started going that I was an LDS. So
Yeah.
the missionaries talked to me. They gave me a Book of Mormon to read, a New Testament. And I also found out when I got back from being at church for 3.5 hours that I could sit and read the scriptures and be undisturbed by the drill sergeants on Sundays.
Oh my goodness. So this was a great way to avoid duties.
That's right. So mail lingering brought me into the gospel. And then I prayed about it and got a testimony and got baptized before I left that base.
Yeah.
So,
Holy cow.
so I since I'm contrary, I did the opposite of what most people do when they go in the military. I stopped drinking and
Yeah.
partying.
Yeah, normally normally they go in and pick up smoking and drinking and swearing and all
Yeah,
all the
hanging
bad
out with
habits.
whores and all kinds of stuff. Yeah. And one of the things they had with one of the retunings after they finally let the basic trainees start going to the enlisted men club
Yeah.
was people would come back on their hands and knees and pray to Ralph. They'd go to the porcelain throne, open it up, and then puke their
Yeah.
guts out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that
And I
wasn't for
missed
you.
out on that too. It was
You really missed out, John.
So then what happened is I was on the Army for, well, it's total of 5 years before I got I got off active duty in June. I think it was July. I went into the MTC and then went back to Korea, which the Army had sent me to language school for Korean, so I already spoke the language.
I bet that made your mission a lot easier for you.
Well, yes and no. Okay. My American senior companions did not like the fact that I could sit and chat up with the Koreans and also understood all the words they didn't because they were words that they should avoid.
Yeah.
So
That checks out.
yeah, so and then also I had a lot of my Korean. I was with Korean Army.
Yeah.
I mean, it was American Army, but we had Koreans embedded, and we'd go to this. I had a lot of buddies that were Korean on our
Yeah.
Korean Army, and they'd come look me up.
So they'd come and
When I was a
find you. They're like,
missionary.
"Hey, he's around. We got to go find
They
John."
do. They come and bang on the door where I was staying,
Oh
and
my
that
gosh.
freaked out. Yeah,
Yeah, I
Koreans
could see some
didn't
companions
bother
not
them, but
liking
the
that.
American missionaries, all these Korean soldiers would be pounding on the door. Hey, Gilmore, where you at? You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, that's a great journey. It's
Yes.
cool that it's funny
Right.
how people end up the way they do.
Right.
So we were talking over Christmas. You had come over and we were visiting, and I had mentioned how I am frustrated with the direction that some of our church has gone, and I understand why they're doing it. The church is
Right.
giving us more autonomy and letting us choose for ourselves how we want to participate
Correct.
in religion. And I had mentioned that I see members of the church that are wanting to, for example, I see a lot more nose piercings nowadays. I see
Mm-hmm.
members getting a lot more tattoos, and that sort of thing. And you said something very interesting that I was just like, I love this, which was those guys aren't Latter-day Saints, they're Latter-day Sadducees.
Correct.
And I really wanted to kind of dive in on what that. So what was the difference between the Sadducees and the I guess would it be the Orthodox Jews? I'm not really
Well,
even
the
sure.
Pharisees. The Pharisees.
So there's Sadducees and Pharisees, but was there a middle point at all, or did you have to be one?
The Essenes were probably, you had people like, uh, the one that was John the Baptist's father was killed between the altar. He was probably, what happened is, I think, is that the people that were the true followers of Jehovah
Yeah.
became Christians.
Yeah.
And disappeared because they recognized Christ.
Yeah.
The Sadducees didn't, because the Sadducees basically their thing was they wanted to get along with the Romans. They were, a lot of them spoke Greek. They had compromised with the Greeks before the Romans came, and they were trying to be as much like the rest of the world as possible without stop being Jewish.
Yeah.
Okay, so they basically were compromised to the max. The
Yeah.
Pharisees they based their thing on the law, and they were very much, they liked dead prophets because they could interpret their teachings the way they wanted to. They
Yeah.
didn't like, and that's been a problem since the beginning, where
Yeah.
it's always the dead prophet's easy because he is not there to speak for himself.
Yeah.
And
He can't
that's
clarify. It
today,
is what it
huh?
is.
That's
He
right.
doesn't. Yeah.
So yeah, we have that in the problem of the church today. I mean, we have people that go and they go through the journal of discourses to prove their point, but they don't want to listen to what the current prophet and apostles have to say, because that just is different from what they think, and it's so much easier to take somebody that's dead because they can't speak for themselves.
Well, it reminds me a lot of my best friend when we were in college. We had a roommate that was, ditching church and not doing the things that he was supposed to, whether that was dating people that he shouldn't have been, or partying and drinking. And me and my best friend, we were kind of talking about this guy, and he mentioned something that I think is very similar, in that he was just like, I don't think it's cool to not do my religion. I'm at the point where I want to practice my religion, and I want to try to be a part of this team, and I want to
Right.
be in on this. And now that doesn't mean that I want to go to the extreme where I'm using where I'm going to judge others for their faults, but at the same time, I think that we need to be trying to do the religion and not do the world and have the religion on the side.
Right. And the Sadducees, basically do the world and have the religion on the side.
Yeah.
And the other thing is the Pharisees, they got the opposite. You just do the religion, and you completely, want to it's kind of like the monastic tradition, which
Okay.
was very strong, where they basically, the world is so evil, we're just not going to have anything to do with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Well, and I don't want that. Yeah, I don't like that side either, because I do think that we need to be able to interact with people that aren't of our faith,
correct,
and we need to, be able to be in the world,
but
but
not of the world.
not of the world.
Yeah.
And how do you draw that line, John? What do you look for in when interacting with others,
Well,
and
I
how do you
think
draw
it's
the
basic. The primary, the golden rule is, what would Christ do in this situation?
yeah,
Okay, and if you keep that first in your mind, and then you're not going to participate in the, you're not going to, you can be out of the mud hole
yeah,
and help somebody out of it. You don't completely ignore the mud hole,
yeah,
but you don't get into the mud hole.
yeah,
Okay. So, there's people who think, oh, I can't understand anybody unless I go out and smoke marijuana and get drunk with them. Well, no, that's not true.
yeah,
I mean, um, because the thing is, you basically, that, um, and so what I do is I try to treat everybody the same, and then also don't making judgments just based on outside appearances. Like somebody that smokes, he smells like tobacco and stuff like that. He
yeah.
may have a better understanding of treating others with Christ-like love than somebody that doesn't smoke and drink, but shuns anybody, and basically is very closed. They won't open up their heart. They won't open up their wallet.
Yeah, and you're never gonna be welcomed in as well.
Right. And the thing is the Lord gives us things as to benefit us and others, not for us to just accumulate stuff. And
Yeah,
with materialism is a big problem, and it was in Christ's day, and it is today.
yeah,
He talked about these people throwing this, putting off to show off, giving money, and then the widows bite, but they'd also walk, the good Samaritan, they'd walk right by the guy, laying on the side of the road, because they're so busy, they don't want to break the Sabbath by picking this guy
by
up.
by helping someone. Yeah.
Somebody, yeah.
And I was talking with Tyler this last weekend, and that's one thing he was saying. He was surprised at how many members of the church that he would do their taxes, and so he would see like what their tithing payment was as compared to what they're actually making, and he was like, I'm very surprised at how little people are wanting to pay, and
Right.
and
So,
and doing
well,
that.
the
So
way I treat my tithing is that when the check hits the bank,
Yeah.
I tithe on that. Okay.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I don't tithe on my gross because Uncle Sam takes a whole bunch of it.
Well,
But
I
whatever
think
hits the
that
bank, I tithe on.
I think that's a good way to do that. That's what we do. You
Yeah.
know, it's
And
what I
so,
make. It's not the gross. I don't need to
yeah,
be
because
tithed on my taxes.
right. And the thing is that I tithe on what hits the bank,
Yeah.
because I don't see any of the other.
Well, and I get
And when I
people
get a
probably.
tax refund, I tithe on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and then also I try to always give a fairly generous fast offering.
I really love tithing and fast offerings. Well, I love and hate it. I love it because it works, and I hate it because it works. Because
Right.
if I don't if I don't pay my tithing, then all of a sudden I'm like broke and struggling, and there's a real correlation in my life with how I pay my tithing and how I'm doing financially.
Yeah.
Very
And
weird.
the other thing is I try to stay out of debt. Now, I owe very little bit of money on my house compared to what it's worth, and my kids are getting to be too materialistic, so that's one reason why we're selling this big house and moving over to the smaller one.
Yeah. Oh.
Uh,
Well,
so
John.
anyway, so what else did you want to continue, or did you about
Well,
done for your?
I think that this is probably enough for the podcast, but I just wanted to thank you so much for hopping on and joining me. I know this was a little bit of a headache getting going, but I know my in-laws really appreciate you and your wife,
Right.
and they just love having you guys around. I'm
Well, that's
really
good.
looking forward to when you're going to take them to Puerto Rico so that I have a good reason to go to Puerto Rico.
Well, absolutely. Yeah, I think that would be a great place for your father-in-law. I mean, I think I don't know if we got to convince your mother-in-law, because hers all about the grandkids, I think.
Well, we'll just bring the grandkids to Puerto Rico too. That'll be fine.
Well, I think that my kids, I don't know if I told you about my sons. I have 3 sons that are married.
Yeah.
And they told me that they'd much rather visit me on Christmas in Puerto Rico than they would. And they don't even want to come to Idaho because it costs too much. And
it's too cold and
too cold. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Well, I would visit you in Puerto Rico as well. So
I think a lot of people would.
You'd be
and then,
Hotel Gilmore.
Hotel Gilmore. And then about my sister, right?
The sailor.
Right. She teaches sailing. Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. I need to meet her. I think that her and I would be buddies.
Yeah. Yeah. She's down in Orlando area right now. She just left.
Really?
Down there. Yeah. So Davenport is one of the suburbs of Orlando. That's where she stays until it warms up. But she's going to be teaching sailing on the Gulf of Mexico this winter.
Good for her.
Yeah.
I think that I need to go and take a lesson from her because that'd be awesome.
Yes. Okay. Well, it's great talking to you.
Yeah, good talking with you. I actually got a thing that says I'm running out of time anyways on our recording.
Okay. We'll talk to you later. Take care.
Take care.
Okay.
Happy New Year. Bye.
Happy New Year. Bye.